but this brings up that one question you asked me earlier. And this will be the last question of this segment. Would you date someone or
who
be
makes less than
or be in like potentially eventually like marriage?
Yeah.
Someone who makes less money than you.
Are you asking me this?
I'm asking you first, and I'll give my answer.
I think I would. I think what makes it hard is that if you're not able to share the same experiences because there's such a difference in like how much you're able to spend on things. I think for me, like I agree, like I don't travel nearly as frequently as you do, or I don't okay.
Flights.
All right.
Catching flights, not catching feelings.
I take like a few trips every single year.
But you take really nice trips.
That's the thing. It's like
I'm frequent, and they're nice trips, but it's not like as nice as the trip.
Well, yeah, because I save up my money to like do the week. You know what I mean? Like.
Yes, I'm a very indecisive person, and I book the month of, and like I just want to go.
No, I like save up the money like for a few months so that I can like afford like a nice week-long type of deal. Anyways, so I think that would be like a hard thing. It's like, because at this point in time, at least, like I don't make enough money to just like take people with me for free. You know what I mean? Like if I was making that amount of money, like an amount of money where I was just like, yeah, like I can afford to like bring people with me without like thinking about it.
That'd be like,
dude, I don't know, but it's definitely more than what I'm making right now, or what I'll probably make in the next couple of years. Like if I was making like I don't know, over 6 figures at this point in time and still living like how I am right now, like I could afford to take
it had to be like, it can't be like low 6 figures, so it has to be like,
I think it could be low 6 figures.
I'd like the 2s.
No, like I think I could make like $100,000 and take one person on a nice trip with me for free.
Okay.
That's where all the extra money would be going. I'm not trying to upgrade my lifestyle too.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. So like I think if I was in a financial position where I was comfortable enough to like to like I said, like with the investments, like if it goes to zero, it's like gotta be money that I don't care about. That's the same with like like paying for other people. It's like if I can afford to do it without thinking about it, then it doesn't matter at that point, right? Yeah. So I would say yes, but like in my current circumstances, like it would be harder.
It'd be hard
to share.
But only on those like specific situations.
Yeah, but like I think
that's
about
not
at the same
be
time.
Like what tells you, oh, I'm not
right,
going to
exactly. But I'm thinking like at the same time, like like for example, like this year, like I went to Hawaii with my friends, and like I have friends who like aren't working right now, or like are like I have a friend who's like still in college, like making like like a college like
student.
Yeah, like she's a nursing like she's a nursing student, so she like works in the hospital and makes like a decent chunk of money in the hospital, but not like full-time income like the rest of us are, right? Like I have people who like are like that, and we still manage to like put together like something that's fairly nice on a budget that fits us all, right? And like it's like I wasn't like wanting for anything, and like all my friends were able to like afford the same things, right? So it's like when I think about those types of things, it's like I can't see why I wouldn't be able to make it work in some way, right?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But you told me the opposite today.
I didn't tell you the
well,
exact
not the opposite, but you had limitations.
So I did have limitations. So it's sort of in the same vein though. It's in the same vein in relation to like I don't like this goes both ways too. I will say this goes both ways. I don't like to feel like I'm using someone. I don't like to feel like I'm being used. So it's just like, it's not that the money per se will be like, oh, this is like a red flag, like a no-go.
Sure, yeah.
Like obviously, we're very privileged. Like I make a very very good salary, and I don't expect everyone to be able to even come close to that. But I think for me, and like what I like to do, like I like the traveling, like all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Like I want you to experience that with me, like similar to what you were referring to. And like obviously there's ways to make it less expensive, and also like I'd be finding deals. I'd be finding hotel deals like 20, 30, 40% off. Like send me a Instagram DM and I'll let y'all know. I'll put you on. But like like those are things that are very valuable to me. And that's something that, I would want to share with someone I'm interested in. And I think, to your point, I'm not in the position to, like, be, like, flying people out right now.
Yeah.
And also, that's just, like, it's a slippery slope for me of the being used piece. And I don't know, that's probably just, like, a mental block. I probably need to talk to a psychologist. But
you gotta go to therapy before.
I have to go to therapy. But, like, I think that's where it gets a little slippery. Like, obviously, this is someone's birthday. Like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, it doesn't... Like, that's your birthday present. Like, it's fine. And, like, I'm not going to be the person who's like, oh, we're at dinner. I'm like, I'm fine paying. Like, I'm fine with you paying every once in a while. Like, I don't have a problem with those sorts of things. But, like, when it gets to, like... It's, like, consistency almost.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm always the one paying for all of the trips, it's just like, It's like... I don't know, like, do you really love me or do you really love the trips? Like, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's more of on your trust side of things.
Yeah, maybe a trust issue.
Than it's on the financial side of things.
Yeah, maybe I even be financial. But, like, and also I don't want to feel bad about, like, about being like, oh yeah, I'm on this trip. I don't want to feel like I'm, like, showing off to, like, my significant other. So I said, between, like, 15-20% lower. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. And, like, if it is lower, like, what you have to understand, like, my preference is, like, focus on those experiences. Like, you're spending money on experiences. It's not like you're, like, 15, 20, however much lower. And, like, you potentially could have the money to, like, take trips with me. And you're more focused on, like, buying, like, a bag or a belt or something like that. I think it's more so that of, like, where your alignment, like, because I think one of the biggest things is not necessarily like how much money you each make, it's more so if you're like financially aligned. Like if you're like sort of have a similar or complementary like sort of view of money and like how you best utilize it. It also has to do with sort of your love language. Like my top love language is quality time. Like, that's why I like trips. That's why I like eating out. Like, eating out, like, I'll pay for eating out. Like, I don't really care about that. But trips, those get expensive. Like, ain't nobody trying to buy 2 trips.
I don't know what you're talking about, but, like, eating out gets expensive, too. Like, that's sometimes a trip in itself. You know what I mean? Don't lie.
Like how expensive are you talking about?
Like, add in, like, 2 or 3 months of eating out expenses, and that's
that is a whole trip. You are correct. I know that very well.
But, like, so I've been in a relationship where, like, sophomore year, right? Like, I was dating someone, sophomore year of college. Oh my God, let's not get it twisted. I was dating someone who had just graduated from college, right? And so, like, was making, like, real money, real income. And, like, I remember, like, at the time, like, up until that point, right? Like, I had been dating people that were, like, in the same, like, at the same age. So, like, we were both flat broke, Like, so it's, like, when you, like, split things or whatever, like, it's, like, normal. But then, like, that was, like, the first relationship where I experienced, like, something of, like, an income imbalance, right? Because, like, obviously this person was, like, making, like, hell of more money than I was working my tour guiding job in college. So it's, like, I felt bad. Like, I was, like, he would, like, pay for everything. Like, for, like, like, all the meals, like, all of the other things. I mean, I paid to drive my ass down to where he was staying at the time. But, like, I felt bad at first. But I think, like, over time, like, it was just, like, the thought of, like, like, he doesn't care. Like, it's not, like, something that, like, he's thinking about as, like, me, like, taking advantage of it or anything like that. And so, like, why should I?
It also depends on the context. Like, it depends on the context.
What's the context? What's the difference?
What's the difference? The difference is that, like, okay, like, I'm dating you, like, you're in college. I'm not going to expect someone in college to, like, pay
But it's the same thing as, like, if that person makes a lot less money.
But I'm not dating someone in college. Like, I'm dating someone
right but, like, what if you were dating someone who, like, works at a nonprofit and makes no money? Like, good job, but, like, doesn't get paid as much. It's, like, the same gap.
I guess. I don't know. I'll figure it out when I figure it out. I don't know how best I would deal with it. I just think, I like expensive hobbies. I think my hobbies are kind of expensive. And I don't necessarily want to go into the income imbalance, but at the same time, it's not going to be something that it's like when you don't want to do it, but it's like if it happens, it's like it happens, and you just sort of work it out how best you can work it out.
Interesting.
You do not believe me? You can be honest on this podcast. You can call me out if you don't think it's like, no, Reggie's a gold digger.
No, I don't think you're a gold digger. I just like, how do I put it? I feel like your reasoning for it is not because, I don't know, like, I don't know how to put this.
Say it.
Well, earlier you were talking about how it's like if you could afford to like, you know, pay twice the amount, you still maybe wouldn't want that because you don't trust that person isn't taking. It
also depends on how long you've been in a relationship.
It wasn't like.
It's like there's just so many different cases that I can imagine.
Okay, we were talking about I was talking about how your trust issues might be the crux of the question that you have with, you know, whether or not you can date someone who's making less.
And you're getting into interesting topics.
Yes, I was saying, I feel more comfortable dating someone who makes less than me than someone who makes significantly more than me. Because, like, you know, I think, like, if someone makes significantly more than me, like, it makes me feel just a little more, like, a little less uncomfortable, or a little more uncomfortable with, like, the gap, right? And like having that, like maintaining that like financial independence and not being like reliant on someone is like important to me, or like something that I'd like to do, right? Like I want to feel like I can afford what I want to afford, like on my own terms, without like having to rely on someone to provide those types of experiences for me. Which is funny because I just said like the opposite of like, you know, like I would do that for someone else without any kind of like ulterior motive. So it's not that like I don't.
So it sounds like you got trust issues too.
No, it's not that I don't trust the other person. It's just like,
don't trust yourself.
For me personally, it feels uncomfortable to take that type of generosity from someone else. I didn't say I wasn't going to do it. Like I said, I've already done it before in the past. Although, like, to be honest, the amount of money spent was probably, like, pretty negligible. Because we didn't do anything, like, super crazy or whatever. But, you know, like, if it were to happen to me again in the future.
Yeah, I think I got too caught up on the trips.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trips were the only thing I was concerned about. Like, yeah, it's fine. That's interesting. Because
For me, it's, like, the day-to-day stuff. Like if I'm like, you know, like at this current moment, I think we're both in the place where it's like if we wanted to go out to eat and order whatever we wanted off of the menu, like it's not like a super, like not a super fancy, like, you know, 3-star restaurant or whatever every single day, but you know, like if we were to go somewhere, like I think like we could comfortably get whatever we wanted and like not have that limitation of like, oh, like, you know, like I can't do that because it doesn't fall into like my budget, which like is a totally fair thing to do, right? Like if you're at the, like if you're in a financial place where you have to do that, like it's like you have to do that, right? And it's like it's cool, but that's like kind of the difference of like, you know, I have to be okay with either like being turned down or like providing that like experience on my own dime, so that other people can enjoy it with me, right? Which, like, for the most part, I think
I would do that.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I have to think about when it comes to like a relationship the other way around.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I have the same concern as you, like the use versus
But you want to marry rich? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's just my thing. Like that's not my goal. Like I imagine it happening.
Right, I was going to say, if you were taken care of in the process.
It's great. But I mean, the thing is, like, but to your point, like, I think as I've imagined that, like, I still, like, had my own. Like, still at the end of the day, I need to make sure that I, as a person, am good.
Yeah.
And, like, sure, I'll accept the gifts, but I'm like, also gifts aren't, like, my number one love language. So, like, you buying me, I don't know what people would buy me. Like, oh, you bought me a Bentley. I don't know, I just came up with something. But, yeah, that's really pushing it. If someone bought me a Bentley, but oh my gosh, thank you, I'll be like shocked, but it's like, it's only gonna last so long. But I'll be like, okay, so when are we going to dinner? It's like, and I think like situations like that, and like it's like I don't want to feel like, to your point, I don't want to feel like I'm not doing anything, but I think at the end of the day, like for me, I know like how much money I make, and I know that I'm going to continue like commanding that level of salary. So I don't think I'll ever feel like there's that thing of like marginal return of money. So like if someone makes double me, like that's a huge amount of difference. But at the end of the day, in the day to day, like it's not going to be that much different in terms of what I can afford for myself versus what they can afford for me. I guess if like you're dating like a billionaire and you're, you know, a salaried employee, like, you know, that may feel a little different.
Yeah.
But like that's like very small chance of that happening. And at the end of the day, like okay, I'll enjoy like being like dating a rich person for a few, like however long it lasts, or it may last forever. But also at the end of the day, making sure that, you know, I myself am comfortable. Like I'm still reaching my financial goals. I'm still doing all of those things. I feel like that's where it feels like a little different to me, and I'm like okay with that. And I'm really okay with the opposite way. I think I just need to get past the trust issue.
Well, it's funny because I just thought of this. But I think the other thing, like, you know how you were earlier talking about like how like you don't want to be taken advantage of,
and I don't want to take advantage of people.
Yeah, like that's my thing is like I really hate feeling like I owe people. You know, like. And it's like if someone's constantly like providing for you, I would just feel like indebted in ways that I wouldn't want to, right? Like it makes it harder to like be like, oh, like I can't like, not saying that this would happen, but like it takes some like a degree of trust to be like, this person isn't going to like, you know, point to their like providing for me as like, you know, reasoning, right? Exactly, for anything.
It's like almost a power dynamic.
Exactly, like it really like shifts it a lot, right? And it's like that is what probably makes me feel uncomfortable. Is like, you know, having like that imbalance in power. Power dynamics. It can mess you up. Like, no, like I'm serious. Like I completely understand that. Yeah.
And I think it's just probably like the way my personality is. But I'm just like, okay.
We're just a little not trusting.
Yeah, like a little not trusting, but also just like knowing that, like it's just like sort of separating myself from the situation. Like I think, and this is like both a positive and a negative. I'm very much so like individualistic. Am I good? Yes or no? Then we'll work out what everyone else is talking about. And was you a little more giving? I'm not as much giving in many ways. In many ways.
That's why like it's funny because like I told myself like after my most recent relationship, I was like, the next person I date, I like the number one trait I want to look for is someone who is like as generous as I am, because it's like hard to be in like a dynamic where it's like you're the giving one and then they're the taking one, right? Because it's like then you're just like constantly giving and like not getting enough in return.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to do with love languages, kind of. Like that just doesn't it doesn't hit me. That'll get some people upset. Like they're like, give me a nice gift. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And just like, oh, okay. And then but you take me out to dinner. I'm like, oh, this is so great. Thank you so much. And like dinner, like, you know, for the most part, that's not crazy expensive. Like it'll get expensive. I'm not saying it's cheap. I'm not saying it's cheap at all. But like at the end of the day, like, you know, you're making a certain salary or something, you can afford to go out to dinner once a month. Like,
why is it dinner for you?
So this is really interesting. This is also why the podcast came up. So the reason it's dinner for me, it's not even like dinner, it's more so like food and like sitting down. Because like when I don't know if you've noticed this, but when like I'm at dinner or I'm eating with someone, like besides taking a photo of the food for Instagram, like I'm not on my phone. I'm very in tune in that conversation and like very much so in the moment. And like I just feel like it's like relaxing. It's like the food's brought to you. You're like joking around. Like if you're over 21, you're having
a drink.
You're having a drink. Like and you're just like conversing, like complaining about what happened at work. Like and it's just like that, like sort of FaceTime and like sort of like you're like sharing like feels and smells and like tastes with someone else. Like that's sort of like that. I don't know. It's just I think it's something like for every special occasion, my family would like go to dinner or something like that. So I think it's partially that, but then like all those extra things and like my top love language being like quality time. That's where it really sits with me, and I feel like that's where you have the most intimate time with someone, probably like outside of the bedroom. Yeah, outside of like your home, like you're just able to just like sit down and like just listen and things like that, and like not. You probably still have to think about like the you surrounding all kind of stuff and ambiance, but like that's like that connection time. There, that time. So I'm deep down inside. I'm a softie.
Okay. It's a little deep.
I'm a little softie. So we're eating the desserts. It's dessert time. I have these cookies.
Not when I dropped on the floor.
But it's okay.
Yeah, it was cute when we went to the restaurant. The girl who we were like ordering with, she was like so excited that we got the cookies because she decorated them herself.
Yeah, she was super pumped up. I'm like, good.
Well, how is it? What flavor is it?
It's just a sugar cookie with frosting. I mean, it's good.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad. I got this, like the Big View Diner where we went to go eat.
Yeah.
Is, I feel like, known for cake, or at least they have like these big cakes, like massively tall, and like tons of different flavors. So I got the white chocolate raspberry flavor. It looks delicious. I already have messed up the side, and then my cat ate some of it. But
you like that?
I'm gonna taste it. We're gonna see how it is. I brought you a fork too.
I don't like. So one thing about
I'm gonna eat this then.
I like dessert, and I like fruit dessert. So I don't like apple pie. I don't like strawberry. Well, I kind of like strawberry shortcake because it's just the strawberries. But I don't like fruit infused desserts.
I'm gonna have to disagree with that.
I said me. I said me. You can't disagree with my own opinion.
No, I disagree.
What I like.
I disagree.
With what I like?
Yeah, I think you're wrong.
I can be wrong for you.
No,
I'm right for me.
I think your opinion is wrong.
I said I don't like it. I never said it wasn't good.
I just don't know why you don't like it.
I see the value. I personally don't.
Well, let me tell you. It tastes delicious. It doesn't really taste like raspberries, if we're gonna be honest here. It tastes like white chocolate though.
I'm good.
It also tastes like tea.
Interesting.
Like I feel like this cream in the middle is like Earl Grey or something. I don't know. Pretty good.
So Lucy, what are we getting up to for Halloween?
That's a great question.
One
that we literally don't have an answer to. We're sitting here. It's like late in the afternoon. We're trying to go out, and we don't know where we're going.
No one has texted us. We're just gonna have to figure it out how we get into it. But what are we doing for Halloween? I think that was the real question that we actually do have an answer for.
What did we call it? We're calling ourselves
Greasy Mechanics.
So we bought some shirts with some inappropriate innuendos on them. I still don't know what yours is.
We still have not looked at that bag.
Since we bought it. But I will be a lubrication expert from In-N-Out Automotive.
I think I'm also from In-N-Out Automotive.
Are you?
But slightly different.
Yeah, we also bought trucker hats. We're gonna wear some jeans. We're gonna wear some fake mustaches. Yes, it's incredibly inappropriate. Like, as in we wouldn't want to wear this costume.
Not the worst Halloween costume I've heard of.
It's not like in a sexy way. Like, I think we're gonna be the opposite of sexy. Yeah. Like, people are gonna want to avoid us. But that's how we like it.
It worked. Speak for yourself.
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding.
If out of the two of us, I'm not the one. Not the one that wants to avoid people.
Who's less approachable out of the two of us? Me.
One of us enjoys living alone.
I love it.
And the other one really hates it.
But has been doing it for a long time. Which brings us into our topic of loneliness. Especially with the pandemic. Like, so you have been reading about loneliness recently.
Yeah, I did say that to a girl that I interviewed yesterday. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't lying. I do remember reading some articles on loneliness.
So what have you read? Like what does it do to us? Like I don't know what you read, so I can't tell you.
Listen, I'm about to spew some words that may or may not be scientifically accurate.
Okay,
so
go right ahead.
No one press me on this. But I think loneliness, just like in general, like humans are very like social beings, right? So like there's like a degree to which we can handle, you know, being by ourselves, and then after that it's just like, you know, you have to interact with other people. I think like from what I remember reading, like loneliness can even have like an impact on your like physical health as well as your, you know, your mental health. You know, because it's just like how like anxiety and stress work, right? Like it's like mentally like you're impacted by it, but also like physically you can start having like symptoms too. So I think that's like potentially a factor of loneliness that like we didn't really necessarily like encounter as much until like a post-COVID world when you were like isolated a lot more frequently. And like for me, like as someone who like didn't have like a bubble during the pandemic, or like didn't like doesn't live with anybody or near most people, and like a lot of my like day-to-day like social interaction like came from like say like being in the office, you know, like talking with my friends there, like having lunch with people. And like so once we went into like a work from home like very like isolated moment, like all of a sudden it was just like me and the cat by ourselves in this house for months, you know, like without like, you know, and like for months when like the pandemic was first starting, like I was like pretty like, you know, conservative in terms of like how much risk I was willing to take. So I was literally like, I went to the grocery store like maybe like once a month for like 3 or 4 months, and like I spent like $800 in one go, like to just like stock up on things that I felt like would keep for that long until it tied me over. But yeah, like so during those times it was like a real like test of like, you know, like how long can you spend in isolation, and not necessarily like without any social interaction whatsoever, because obviously like, you know, like I was exactly, like I was still on Zoom all day, but like, you know, and I was like, you know, at the time like when everyone was gung-ho about like, you know, like doing things like online together and stuff like that, like my friends and I would play like games. It's not like there was no social interaction whatsoever, but it was just like not the same, you know what I mean? Like definitely not the same as like what you would get in a regular kind of circumstance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that like that physical piece. We probably should have had someone actually like read this before, you know, we were like, oh yeah, let's hop in. But like the physical, like some professional. But look
if I'm wrong, nobody quote me.
Yeah, it's just like
because I genuinely like don't know if I'm right or wrong.
But I mean, I could imagine like that makes sense to me that there's some sort of physical impact of loneliness, and like I think a lot of times like for people who aren't like who don't sort of deal with mental health things, like they always try to be like, oh, but you don't look sick, oh, but like what do you mean? So it's really interesting to see how that sort of corresponds with each other, and like can potentially like help us think through like oh no, you're actually dealing with something, and like sort of maybe help diagnose. I don't know, but I don't know how you've done it. So I really don't know how you've done it.
I don't think anybody really knows how I've done it.
Because you're an extrovert. And I'm an introvert, and I said I can't. Like, I was, well, if y'all listened to the last one, which you should have, go back and listen. My worst decision was my worst financial decision was re-signing my lease. But when I was living in that apartment alone, walking around, oh no, I couldn't do it. It was so bad. I went back home to live with my mom, which love her to death, but that is stressful in and of itself. But like, I think overall, like I definitely am happy I made that decision because I'm a person who doesn't, you know, display a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling. But at the same time, you know, you still have those emotional needs, no matter how hard you sort of push that below. And it also just is like a scary time. Like when you think about it, it's just like people like you could have just like people died. Like you could have died, or like your family member could have died. So you don't know. Like I'm sorry.
Where are you going with that?
Well, like, it's just like being able to be close to like the ones like closer to the ones I love the most was like just intrinsically valuable to me. Not only from like a loneliness perspective, but probably like just for like okay, we're fine. Like we're going to be okay. Like if something happened, I can be there for whatever reason. Luckily, no one died of COVID, but you know.
In your immediate family, minus the 400,000 people that actually.
In my immediate family, no one died from COVID. My aunt did die, but she had cancer. Unrelated, from what we know. I don't know why I said it like that. That sounded weird. But
could have been murder. We don't know.
It was not. It was not.
But what if it was? This would be a different type of podcast.
Yeah, this would be like true crime. But like I don't regret it, and like I feel like I've always gone through loneliness. I think it's because I am a very independent person, but with independence comes a little bit of, in my opinion, a little bit of seclusion sometimes. And I'm an introvert, so like that also like helps me along the lines. I don't want to really interact with a lot of people. But I think overall, like I in general have not lived a lot of lives, but lived in a lot of different places. I went like up. I'm from Cleveland. You know this. Up until high school was in Cleveland. High school I went to school in Minnesota. New people, nice people. Some people stay, some people go. Yada yada. Same thing. Went to college. Back in Cleveland, some people stay, some people go, yada yada yada. Then hopping from that into Charlotte, where we had a good group. Some people got along better, some people I probably don't talk to anymore. And not because anything bad, it's just the way the cookie crumbles. But like I also didn't live in like the place where everyone lived in Charlotte. Like I lived a little further south to be closer to work, and that was also kind of like not lonely, but like isolating a little bit. And then once the pandemic hit, like people were leaving, and they just like I don't know how you did it, but I couldn't do it. Like it's just like, and that's probably why I didn't necessarily want to come back here. Once the pandemic is over, and why not? I can't be like, oh, I'm probably not answer the question. I'm not. And it's been confirmed I'm not, but you'll learn more about where I'm going later.
I think like at the time, like when the pandemic first hit and like I made the decision to stay here, even though I was by myself, it was because like to myself I was like, I valued like having my own space, like having a degree of freedom, like not like living in the same roof as my parents, and then like kind of like, how do I put this, like reverting back to like my high school self, which is like the last time that I lived with them. Like I didn't even spend a summer when I was in college like back with my parents. Like I like worked in Cleveland all 3 summers. Wow. So like from the second that I like left my parents' house, like after graduating high school, all the way up until like that point in time, like I had like been, like a pretty independent human being, and like I was just like I valued that a lot. Yeah. Like, being able to like kind of like have my own space, make my own decisions, like not have to deal with like the inevitable kind of like conflict when you like live with other people, right? Like some of that like stuff that just comes up when you're like sharing a space and sharing like all these different things. So at the time, like, I was like, and we didn't know like how long COVID would go on for, right? Like, at the beginning we were hearing like, oh, we're going to be out of the office for 2 weeks. Like, oh, we're going to go back in the summer. Like, oh, we're going to do this and that. Like, I don't think we like fully grasped like how draining or long it would be. And so like for those first like 4 months or so, like I think like from like April, May, June, July, like I was like by myself in this house, and I was like, in my head I was like, like I like talk with people every day, like I make like a very concerted effort to like, do online things with friends. Like I was like, I'm working out, I'm doing all these different things, like I'm cooking for myself, like all that kind of stuff. But then finally, like my parents were like, come back and like just like visit for like, I think like 2 weeks was my original plan, where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go home for 2 weeks, because like, it's like, why not at that point in time, right? Like I hadn't seen my family in a really long time, so I was like, okay, like I'll go back for 2 weeks. And when I went back, I was like, you know, like, yes, like all those like kinds of like some of those like concerns that I had like were true, right? Like I was like losing some of that like independence, losing some of that like freedom. It was like, you know, lunchtime, dinner time, like those were on like my parents' schedule and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like I had like, you know, as much like of like setting my own like kind of boundaries and schedules anymore. But what I traded off for that was like just like having people around, which like had more of an impact than I really like imagined it would. And like I enjoyed it so much, or like I just like, you know, like was so like in need of human contact every day that I think I turned that 2-week visit into like, I think like a 2-month visit or something like that. I just like never, I didn't come back to Charlotte for the longest time. And so, yeah, so that was like kind of when I like afterwards, like, you know, even coming back, like I was a little concerned because I was like, you know, like, what if I didn't realize how bad it was until like I like was in a different environment with like other people, and then I was like a little concerned when I came back to live in this house again by myself, like, oh, like what if it gets like pretty bad again. Luckily, I think around that time, like this was like probably like the end of 2020, so things like had like like opening a little bit, you know, like I was like, you know, we were at the point where it was like I would go hang out in friends' backyards, like socially distanced, you know, and that kind of stuff again. Like when I first came back to Charlotte is like when all that first started.
Oh yeah, around the time I actually visited too.
Yeah, exactly. So like we would do some things that were like, you know, like outside, like hopefully like as distance as possible, you know, masked up when it made sense to mask up. So like, yeah, so that like really like, you know, was honestly the thing that saved me. Like if we had continued to be like as shut down as we were those first like 3 or 4 months, then I think I would probably be living in my parents' house as well, right? Or like I would have moved out of the house that I'm living in right now to go live with someone, because it's really a difficult kind of thing to deal with. Is like just you being by yourself all the time, like and even like though you have like interaction with other people, like not having that like in-person presence makes it feel a lot different. Yeah,
I mean that, you know, that's why I was just like, I need to go. But no, I totally get what you're saying, and I think a lot of people felt that way about returning home. Like it's slightly different for me because I don't know, I've always been like kind of like in and out of home since I guess high school pretty much. But like going back, you know, mom tries to get a little more controlling, and it's just like it's like that's where like, you know, small arguments pop up. Just like, no, I'm my own person, yada yada yada, and just like, but this at the same time, it's like, this is your house, not my house.
Yeah, exactly.
And then trying to sort of bridge that balance. And I think, you know, I think she's actually appreciated it more than I have, which kind of makes sense based on our relationship in general. And she's enjoyed it more than I have. And like now that I'm planning on moving, keep saying considering, like I'm moving, like she's like, oh, I want to spend as much time as possible with you. Like I think this was really good for her. And like for me, I think the benefits was like not sort of like being alone. Like I'm good at being alone. Like, but I don't think it would have been good for me to be alone during that time frame.
Sure.
And away from everyone, because I would have been like in Charlotte, like an 8-hour drive away. Like I wasn't as comfortable flying as I am now, especially like pre-vaccines. It's really crazy. Like it was really crazy. Like we just didn't have anything to compare it to. So it's like you don't really know what to do in that situation. So I think at that point it's just like I just want to be as close as I can to people, even if they do like slightly annoy me, if I get like a little bit out of my way annoyed, like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I think it's just more valuable. It is more valuable for me to like sort of not suck it up, but just be like, yo, it's not gonna work out.
Yeah, I just like, for me it was like, you know, I wasn't really that worried about my parents, if that makes sense. Not in the sense of like like COVID safety. Like obviously, you know, they're like older, so I was definitely like pretty concerned about like, you know, like are you going to like get COVID, and if you do, like it'll be probably like pretty disastrous given like how old like their age bracket, and you know, like how we've seen the impacts of that. So I was concerned about that, but I wasn't really like, you know, concerned about my parents as much feeling, how do I put it, like isolated in those types of ways. Like, you know, at that time I think like my brother was home as well, so they had one kid. It's not like they were like empty nested. And then like my parents, like where like the hometown, like my hometown, like where my parents still live, like they have like a really like tight knit kind of community around them, and like friends around them. And so I think like, you know, like I think my parents had their own like version of like their bubbles and stuff like that, where it was like, you know, none of them were like working in the office or like really like getting any kind of exposure. My parents were like one of the first people to like, you know, really embrace wearing masks and stuff like that before the CDC even was like, wear a mask. You know, they were like, Lucy, go wear a mask, like wipe down all your groceries, like do all this. So like in that sense, like I knew they were gonna be okay. So really for me, it was like going home was for, this sounds bad, but like really truly only like for mostly for like my, you know, benefit. Like I don't think like if I had not felt that like kind of sense of isolation and been kind of like sick of it, like I don't know that I would have like gone home for like such an extended period of time. And now that like I've kind of like been back, experienced it, and like know that like it's like not gonna really encroach on my independence as much as like I thought it would back then, like I'm a lot more comfortable obviously with spending time back home. And like even this year, like I was back for like a month during the summer and stuff like that. Like I ended up like, you know, after last year in 2020, like when I came back, I was here for like August through like up until Thanksgiving, and then like from Thanksgiving all the way up until MLK Day, like I spent back home too. So like at this point in time, it's like, you know, I've spent like a pretty significant amount of time back at my parents' house, living with them and my brother, like as like a 4-piece unit for the first time in a while since I went off to college, and it's all been good. So like now I go back because I know I'm going to like enjoy it to an extent. Like back then it was more just like, you know, I have concerns about like, am I gonna be a like productive person at work? Like, am I gonna be like treated like an adult, you know, in my parents' house? But you know, nowadays I'm like, you know, I think we've figured out kind of some boundaries around like, you know, what that's gonna look like for us. It's funny, like someone told me like the statistic of like, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's like if you think about it, like, you know, from up until like when you're like 18 and going off to college, like after that, like after living in your parents' house for so long, like that's it. Like that's like the majority, you've already spent the majority of time you're going to living with your parents and like seeing your parents, right? So I think like one like benefit of the pandemic, one very small benefit of the pandemic, or like the circumstances that they caused, is that like, you know, you had that opportunity for people who wanted to like go back and like spend that time with your family, which like normally, like, you know, you might see them for like a couple of holidays, right? And then that's it. Like, you know, that's really only like a couple of weeks out of every year for the rest of like
your life.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, you know, like you've like honestly probably like just by going home and like spending time living with your parents during the pandemic, like you've probably like quadrupled the amount of total time that you're going to spend with them, like from when you left college up until and onwards. So that's kind of crazy to think about too, but it did make me a lot more grateful for like being able to do that and to have that like kind of
flexibility.
Yeah, and to have like the support of like my family, because, you know, I didn't really take it like as something that like I cared about up until that point in time when I like the switch flipped and I was like, okay, this is like this is actually like a lot better than what I was going through at the time. And like I still prefer, you know, like having my own space. I still prefer.
Man. I prefer it so much. But yeah, it's just like it's like being real with yourself. Like she needed, I needed it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna act like, oh, mom was the only one who got benefits out there. I'm not gonna say that. Like I definitely like really valued it. You know, I try to mark it up as like, oh, it's a cost savings thing, but it's more than a cost savings thing.
Well, I don't know how much cost you were saving since you were still paying rent.
Well, this year.
Yeah,
kind
that's
of.
fair.
But kind of. But no, it's like you said. I don't think I would have been able to get through it the same way as I did. Because I'm gonna be honest, our work is stressful. It is, and it's explicated on getting on Zooms all the time. Like businesses were changing like very drastically, very rapidly. Like that combined with like you're at home like by yourself pacing. Like I would just pace around my room, around my apartment, and I'm just like, I can't. Like I just knew I'm like I can't do this, and it's just I don't know. And like it's not like we're not homebodies. Like mom and I are homebodies, so it's not like we're going out. But it's just like just having that. Like even if we don't like talk for hours and hours each night and like have heart to hearts and all those sorts of things. Like just knowing that you're like I don't know, like couples, I don't know, like
you're only like that much
that far away, like I can walk to you easily, ask you anything and all that kind of stuff. Like that's like invaluable. And also like a lot of my family is still in Cleveland, so it's like I have just mom, my dad, my grandma, my cousins for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I think like other than like spending time with my parents, the thing that I have come to appreciate the most is that I didn't realize like how much I would miss, which is like kind of a hot take, but I have really enjoyed going back into the office. I know that's like not something that most or like every person would say. And like I think the beauty of like one of the other like side benefits of pandemic times is that like most workplaces like got more flexible, and they were like, like I think like if we were thinking about our company like pre-pandemic, there's no way that they would have let all those people like work remote, because they were like, one of those typical companies that was like, if your butt's not in the seat, like we don't know if you're like doing work or if you're gonna be like as productive. And then what we found was like during the pandemic, people were actually more like productive, like more shit got done, like more like profit was made, whatever, and so I think like now like there's the beauty of like, knowing that flexibility is an option. But for me, like what I didn't realize is like how draining like work is sometimes, and how much I rely on like human interaction in order to like refill my battery to be able to like take on some of that work, right? Like when I was by myself, like no matter how like efficiently I worked or no matter how much I was getting done, like at the end of the day, like I was still tired. Like I was like still like mentally, emotionally, like physically exhausted, and I would always like be counting down like the seconds to like 5 o'clock or like whenever it was like acceptable for me to like leave the office, like turn off Slack and make sure that I was offline. But then like when the office for us like opened back up in August and I started going 3 times a week, like that was like when I was like, oh, I don't actually hate my job. Like I actually just hate working by myself at home. Yeah, which like that was like one thing that I didn't take myself as such like a strong like proponent of like in-person work spaces. But I think for me, it's actually something that I need to take into consideration is that like if a job is fully remote, like I need to find a way to like replace that like that lack of work environment.
Like a WeWork.
Exactly, like a co-working space or whatever it is, or like however I find a replacement, because it's just like an essential part of keeping my sanity together.
I know, and I'm like on the opposite
side.
Well,
right?
not necessarily. Like I really like, so I'm back in Charlotte, obviously. So I went into office 4 days this week. I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed it. Yeah. But for me, it's like always a trade-off.
Sure.
Like there's pieces, like the part of the office I really like, super easy to get more things done. I think it's a little more efficient. Also, it's nice to see people and like complain in person. Like random things happening. You're just like, oh, like complain to your coworkers and be like, oh, I can't believe that happened, and you just work through it. But like I think what the office doesn't give me, and this may be different if I sort of wanted to stay in Charlotte. Like if I wanted to stay in Charlotte, like I don't have a problem with the way it's set up. I would go into the office. Like I think our time is like 2 days a week, 2-3 days a week. I'll be perfectly fine with that. But like I think I don't necessarily have a lot of support system in Charlotte outside of you and some of my like work friends. But like I think like for me it's important to have like a good mix of like work friends and non-work friends, because I feel like with work friends like it's just like you talk about work and it's just like I like talking about work and I like hearing the juicy work gossip, but like I need like some other sort of stimuli and like a different perspective sometimes, because like not to say that we get into groupthink, but like that always has an impact in any like large scale organization at some point. Additionally, like I just wanted something new. I just didn't really like vibe with Charlotte as a city, and I think also like I really enjoyed like over this past year like working in different places. I really enjoyed that flexibility, and that's like sort of like a direct impact of COVID and like shining like a way that is like the best out of the worst situation. But being able to like explore that and really like dig into like my traveling, and also like being able to be more flexible with my hours, so that like if like it's not like, oh, I like leave my house at 8 o'clock in the morning, I get home at 7 o'clock, I'm tired, I'm like this. And then also like I feel like sometimes in the office I felt like I felt a little bit under a microscope sometimes. And like being able to be like, oh, I had a bad presentation, and not have to walk back and like hear the presentation went bad and what that you already knew kind of went bad, and just be able to log off of a Zoom and be like, oh my god, I can't believe I said this, I can't believe I said that. And like just give yourself that feedback without having like all of the extra like not that they're looking at you like looking at every action, but like you sometimes can feel like that. At least in my opinion, that's how I felt sometimes. I enjoy working in the office, but for me the benefits of working in the office don't outweigh the cons. But I will say this to like people who are newer to the work field: I would never encourage anyone to go like fully remote from the start.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I would not like. Yeah. I really appreciate and value the time I spent in the office, and I don't think I would be able to make an appropriate decision of whether I wanted to return to the office if I hadn't been in the office.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, so since the pandemic began, I've moved teams 3 times, which is a lot. But that means like, like having moved that many times means that I've had to like get to know entirely different like processes, entirely different teams of people, like, just like how like a whole like separate business works like over and over again. And like I think like some of the confusion that I had, like, or some of the like, some of the like especially like getting to know people piece of it, like that would have been like exponentially easier if it was just like, hey, like so and so's desk is like across from mine, like do we work directly together every day like on the same projects? No, but like the occasion when I actually do need to talk to that person, like we already have like kind of some kind of like relationship, or at least like we know who we are. Like the amount of like cold Slack messages I've sent to people on my team, where it's like, I know we've never talked before, but I need you for this task. Like it's been so high. Weird. Yeah, it's like kind of like, it's like, it's bad because it's like, I know we've been in the same meetings for like 3 months now, and this is my first time like reaching out, but like now I actually need you. Like those kinds of things like I think are avoided a little bit by the office. And like also just like getting to like know the business is just easier, because it's like when you have a question, like oftentimes it's as simple as just like turning to the person next to you, like, hey, asking it, right? Rather than just being like, a lot of the times I would just like sit there and like struggle on my own, and like that's partially on me, right? It's like because I could just like ask the question, but like you don't know.
Sometimes you don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you don't know like what you should know and what you shouldn't know. Like, you know, if there's something that's like, oh, like I forgot to tell you this, and then it's like the answer to why like you couldn't like figure out one of the problems that you're having, then it's like, what are you gonna do about it? So I totally agree. Like, you know, at least get to like that point where you like, if you have an office job, like, or if you are moving into an office job right away, like, at least get to the point where it's like
if you have a good understanding
exactly,
of what the
and
office,
like a foundation of like, you know, with
and
that
you
team.
can and you can outweigh the benefits
Yeah.
and cons for you. Like it's definitely like for me, it's not even about the office really. Like I would go into the office. Like I would prefer not to go into the office 5 days a week. I will say that would be a lot for me. But it's not even about the office really. I don't think that's the rationale as to why I'm going to work remote. It has something to do entirely with like my life outside of work and what works best for me, not the office itself.
Right.
And I feel like that's a good clarification to have. Because I think that's the same for most people. I don't think it's like, oh, like I don't want to go into the office. I don't think the office is the main driver for preventing people not wanting to go into the office. Like I know people just like, oh, I moved. Like it's just like I don't want to have to move back. Like I have a foundation here. I think it's more so like that sort of interpersonal connections that you have with a specific place. Because sometimes it's just like people move, people change, like, and also like we're still young. Like I don't have any ties to Charlotte. I don't own a home in Charlotte. I don't have like a dog. I don't have kids. I don't have like a significant other. I'm not married. Like it's just like there's like nothing really tying me to Charlotte except my job. Which, you know, I like my job, but like at the end of the day, like I'm not like, and I think that's something that's actually changed in a positive way coming out of the pandemic. Like people are like not as much like living for your job, but seeing how your job like fulfills certain aspects of your life. Like and how it sort of plays a big role in your life, but not necessarily like feeling as chained to your job. I think it's been really interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, well, right now we're living in the Great Resignation. You know what I mean? We're like, people are like moving on from their jobs, and it's like a really competitive job market because I think of a lot of the things that they are thinking about are like, you know, how can this job better benefit me, or like is the job that I'm at right now like really what I need to be tied down to, or is there other better opportunities for me out there somewhere? So yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know if it was because of the pandemic that people realized that.
And I said this before. I think it partially is.
Like I think it depends certainly on industry for sure.
But like the one thing that I think I said it in the first podcast episode. So if don't get mad at me about saying this again, but it slowed things down. Like I think the pandemic really slowed a lot of things down and allowed some people who are just like running like basically automatic, like running as they normally would, to be like, wait, let me pause a little bit and let me think. Like I think that's one thing that I've noticed about a lot of things. Like take more time to think. Is like, oh, is this like, oh, I've been at this job 5-10 years, like I've gotten used to it, but I'm like, ooh, pandemic hit, like, ooh, I wasn't expecting this. It's just like, so it's like, it's not necessarily has to do with just the job. I think it applies to like all aspects of your life. You have to, it really at least for me, caused me to reconsider like what's valuable to me, like what's like, what do I really enjoy doing? What do I not as much enjoy doing? What can I give up and not necessarily feel anything about it? But what do I want to like focus in on that like I've just sort of been putting on the back burner? Like it's just that extra like time that you just have to spend with yourself or like those who you're closest with.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point to make, right? Is that maybe people just weren't thinking about it.
Yeah, like, because I feel like, you know, people get into such like a routine.
Yeah, and then you're just like, you know,
you're running automatically.
It's harder to like break the momentum of that. That's something true. All right. Well, I have a headache. I think I ate too much cake.
Yeah, I think I'm tired. I want to take a
Me too. We gotta take a nap before we
take a nap, and then we have to do our Halloween photo shoot. But thank you all for listening. This one wasn't as fun. It was kind
No,
of.
because we chose a sad topic.
We chose a sad topic.
You think finances would be like also?
But that one was funny because we're kooky. But no, I think overall, like I grew a lot.
Yeah, during the pandemic. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, definitely would not replay that. Ooh, God. I'm sorry.
Don't run it back.
Don't run it back.
I would definitely now though like make different decisions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That I did back then. Yeah.
So many different.
I don't think I would be living in this house.
What do you think you would do?
I think I would have moved in with with a roommate.
With a roommate.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I think I probably would have returned home maybe, but I maybe would have got my own space at home. Yeah. But then again, I don't really know. I don't really know. Who knows?
All we know is that you would not have paid rent.
Oh my God. I would not.